Hello and welcome back to Planet 40k. Today's video review is based on the BLADEGUARD Veterans. And this is another video that we need to update since the release of the Codex. So before we do get into the review guys, we're trying to get to 3,000 subs. So if you have stumbled upon the video today, we do 4 reviews a week based on the units from the new codexes from the 9th edition. So you've got Marines, Necrons and Death Guard, they're the current 3. And we sometimes dip our toes into supplements like Blood Angels, Death Watch and Space Wolves 2. So if that is of interest, sub to the channel to not miss out on any of our videos. It will do us a huge favour. So thank you all for doing that now. Okay, so for the BLADEGUARD Veterans, quite a popular selection so far this edition. They're an elite choice for the detachment. They come in at 5 power or 35 points a man before any upgrades. Before the new book, they were only a 3-man unit, but since the Codex release, it's been changed from a min unit of 3 and it can now go right up to a 6-man unit. So if you are taking more than 4 models, the power rating is going to go from 5 to 10. So kicking off the review with some keywords. So as always, Marines have the chapter keyword. They're a core unit which is highly interactive with some of the aspects of the book and each chapter supplement as well. They're Primaris models. They're an infantry which works well with stratagems as well as being able to take advantage of terrain features within the game. Looking at their stats, movement 6-inch, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 3, attacks 3, leadership 8 and a 3+ save. So the sergeant gets an extra attack and gives the unit a leadership 9 while he's alive. So a nice amount of attacks here and 3 wounds apiece is not too shabby. In terms of abilities, Angels of Death, which is the umbrella of 4 main Space Marine rules, which are and they'll show no fear. So no modifiers to combat attrition tests, which is quite rare that they're going to fail morale anyway, but always handy army wide. Bolter discipline won't affect them as they've not got any of the rapid fire bolter weapons. I'll display this anyway for reference. Shock Assault, which is an extra attack if they were charged, did charge or heroically intervene. Then Combat Doctrines, which is an extra -1 AP buff to your weapons depending on which battle round it is. So these guys in particular will be taking advantage of battle round 3 and onwards, which is where the Assault Doctrine can be made active. And this doctrine affects both melee weapons and pistols, which is actually not bad as the later battle rounds are usually the rounds where you should be in combat. The earlier rounds are predominantly based around ranged attacks. They've also got the ability to combat squad, so if you have a max unit of 6 BLADEGUARD vets, then during deployment you can split them into 2 lots of 3 units to act independently from one another, and of course it only takes 1 elite slot when building your detachment. The only downside to using combat squads is if you're using a stratagem, you can only select one of those units to put the stratagem on, whereas if there was still one large unit, then all 6 models would benefit from the stratagem. So you've got the choice, but it's a nice option. The next 2 abilities are dependent on your chapter. If you play Dark Angels, then they can be given the Deathwing keyword to interact with the new Dark Angel supplement that's due for release any day now. Or if you play Space Wolves, then they'll be given the Wolfguard keyword to interact with the Space Wolf supplement. In both of the books, we'll require those keywords for the unit to be eligible for the stratagem to be used upon them. So that's the abilities. Next we're going to check out their war gear. So every model is equipped with a heavy bolt pistol, a mastercrafted power sword, frag and crack grenades, and of course a storm shield. So let's run through each one of those, starting with the heavy bolt pistol. It's got an 18-inch range, it's pistol 1, strength 4, -1 AP and 1 damage. So it has a half decent range at 18-inch and the -1 AP is a nice bonus, -2 AP if it's turn 3 onwards in the Assault Doctrine. So it's also pretty solid as you can fire this within engagement range if you're still in a fist fight. So popping off some extra shots could take a model off the table, which ultimately is going to aid your fight. Now in terms of melee weapon, they've got a mastercrafted power sword which is strength +1 making it strength 5. -3 AP and 2 damage. Now this is a tidy weapon. Strength 5 is your perfect anti-infantry strength on a weapon. -3 AP leaves 6+ armor saves. Unless it's turn 3 onwards, then it's going to be a -4 AP due to combat doctrines, so then it'll only be invuln saves. And 2 damage a pop is hurting Primaris Marines, which a lot of players are running at the moment. To give you an idea of how these guys do in combat, they each get 3 attacks base, add another one each for Shock Assault, which is the majority of the time, giving you 4 attacks a man. And of course the sergeant gets an extra attack. So I'll do a breakdown on a full 6-man unit to see their potential here. So a 6-man BLADEGUARD veteran unit is going to have 25 attacks with Shock Assault included. They hit on 3s, so on average that's going to be 16.7 hits landing. Against toughness 3 and 4 you only need 3s to wound, so you should on average be getting 11.1 wounds. And toughness 5 is about 8.3. If you target something tougher such as a vehicle, then you're requiring 5s. So only 5.6 wounds on those. Now as mentioned, -3 AP leaves pretty much nothing as a save and 2 damage a pop is brutal. If you're against say a unit of orcs, then you're flattering 11 of them no problem. Against Primaris Marines it's around 9. As they're going to make a few 6+ armor saves, but 9 is still an insane amount when Marines cost anything between 20 and 30 points a man. Now that's a lot of points being removed in a single turn of combat. Not to mention that you'll be fighting in your opponent's fight phase too, so when you factor that in, the overall damage in a battle round is huge. If you went up against a toughness 7 monster or vehicle, then you're averaging 5.6 wounds to put around 9 damage on them, unless they've got an in-run save. But even with a 4+ in-run save, you can be doing around 5.5 damage there on average. And vehicles aren't even really your target, but it's not bad. So I'm pretty impressed with the damage output here. To continue with the war gear, the frag and crack grenades I'll display for you on the screen now. They may actually see some use with this unit as they only carry pistols, so it might actually be worth throwing one of these if you're close enough. Then onto the final piece of stock war gear, which is the Storm Shield, one of my favourite bits of war gear in the game. So Storm Shield gives the bearer a 4+ in-run save, and in addition you +1 to your armor saving throw made for the bearer. So not only are you at the very least shrugging off half the wounds that land, but it also grants your guys a 2+ regular armor save, and that's before adding anything for light cover. So really strong against light weapons such as regular bolt guns, but it also is quite helpful against the high AP weapons that normally would go through the armor. Not only that, you don't have to pay extra points for this, as it's built in within your cost of 35 points. So there is an upgrade option for your sergeant too, in fact, so he can replace his heavy bolt pistol for either a Neo-Volkite pistol or a plasma pistol. So the Neo-Volkite pistol is a 15-inch range pistol 2, strength 5, no AP and 2 damage. And each unmodified wound roll of a 6 will inflict a mortal wound in addition to the damage. So for me, you purchase this every time. You're now getting 2 shots at strength 5, usually means you're wounded on 3s, and now it's 2 damage a pop. Now against the current meta, it's much more valuable than a single damage weapon. And then the extra mortal wound when you roll a 6 to wound is a nice little extra. Then you've got the plasma pistol, which is also 5 points. So before selecting targets, you have to select a profile. You've got the standard and the supercharged profile, both at 12-inch range, pistol 1. The standard is strength 7, -3 AP and 1 damage, and if you supercharge it, it's strength 8, -3 AP and 2 damage. However, when you supercharge it and you roll a 1 to hit, you kill the bearer. So usually I'd stay away from plasma pistols, but as the unit's only firing pistols anyway, it doesn't make this a bad option. However, the only issue here is it's damage 1 when you're firing from the standard version. Okay, you're more likely to go through armor because of the AP and cause that wound, but it's still only 1 damage at the end of the day. Supercharging it will give you the 2 damage, but it comes at a huge risk. Of course, if you're within range of a captain, or you've got other methods of re-rolling 1s to hit, then it's not so bad, but without the re-rolls, I'd leave it at home. It's also worth noting that although this is also a pistol, the range is quite short in comparison to the heavy bolt pistol, which is 18-inch. So with a heavy bolt pistol, you could be getting a few rounds of shooting him before making the charge, whereas this plasma pistol might fall short for a round. So for one of the shooting phases, this may be redundant. So it's not a bad choice. I'm not keen on plasma in general. If I had $1 for the amount of 1s I've rolled while supercharging plasma, I'd be on a private yacht somewhere in the Bahamas. So we spoke about the stats, their abilities and the war gear. Now I wanted to go over some synergy with the rest of the book and briefly touch upon some chapters. Starting off with the stratagems of note here. So transhuman physiology is the go-to stratagem for a lot of marine players. For 1 CP or 2, depending on the models, you effectively turn all attacks made against your blade guard into strength 4 weapons as they only wound on 4+. Gene Route Might for 1 CP turns any 6s to hit in the fight phase into auto wounds. Not bad when you've got 25 attacks on a max unit, roughly 4 of those are going to be 6s. As for unit synergy, your warlord could select to have the warlord trait called Rites of War Aura, which is a 6-inch aura that gives core units objectives secured. So if you are trying to steal an objective and using your warlord to go in with your blade guard vets, this is a solid choice. If you're selecting a librarian, he has his uses. From the psychic powers list, you've got Veil of Time to reroll your charge roll, or you can fight first in the fight phase. Both very helpful abilities. Null Zone to remove in-run saves for all units within 6 inches of the Psyker. So if you charge in and have the Psyker behind, then you're likely to be putting the enemy on a pretty poor save. Just a side note here, someone brought this to my attention in the comments in a few videos ago, that it doesn't just work on enemy units, it also turns off your own in-run save. So make sure you're going first in a particular fight or you've really messed up. If you're like me and you like using chaplains, then the best litanies here are of course the standard of Litany of Hate, rerolling all hits in melee, Litany of Faith to ignore the mortal wounds on a 5+. Now we've seen from the Death Guard Codex that's recently been released that they can throw out tons of mortal wounds from stratagems and all sorts of other units. So this one may potentially be a really strong litany against certain factions. Exaltation of Rage to add 1 to the wound rolls, although this won't likely help Blood Angel players as they've already got red first. But for everybody else, you're already wounded on 3, so it's going to be 2s to wound. Canticle of Hate is the last one that adds a 2-inch to your charge roll and gives an extra movement for piling and consolidation moves. As for other units in the book, as always, captains granting rerolls of 1s to hit is a nice bonus, especially with that plasma pistol if you opt to take that. Lieutenants giving rerolls of 1s to wound, although you don't see many lieutenants at the moment, Apothecaries of course will help your guys stay alive and can be reviving one of them each turn with a stratagem, so that's a solid investment there. These guys also have a bit of synergy with the Bladeguard Ancient. He's got the Astartes banner, which allows your guys to still fight even when they've died in that phase, on a 4+ roll though, and they've only got 1 attack from it. But more importantly, he gives the Bladeguard veterans a +1 to hit, so you'll be hitting on 2s. He is 85 points, so it's pretty steep, but you could give him a relic as he is a character, but I think 85 points is far too expensive, and he doesn't actually have a melee weapon, so I'd rather take a captain. The final unit to consider is a Judicial, which allows you guys to always fight first, which is quite important. So that's the units that grant buffs and whatnot. Then we need to focus on some transport options. So unfortunately these guys cannot deep strike like Terminators can, so they need to find another way in. First login works fine, but it is slow and a tad risky. You've got a couple of options here. Firstly, the Repulsor and the Repulsor Executioner. Both options will get your max unit inside. They only move 10 inch, but it's a much safer way to travel up the board. You could opt for the Impulsor tank, which moves 14 inches rather than 10. And you could also jump out after it's moved to fire your pistols, but you can't charge that round. Again, quite risky. I think I'd rather sit and wait until the next turn. Unfortunately, they can't go inside drop pods or Storm Ravens as they're Primaris, so the only other option here is paying the points for strategic reserves, which will either cost you 1 or 2 command points depending on your unit size. But you can be bringing them in from the sides of the board and hope to make that 9-inch charge. So now I wanted to touch upon some chapters here. Now I don't go too deep into the chapter supplements, otherwise these videos would be 4 hours long. So I'd always ask if you can put down in comments below your combos, any unique chapter buffs and stratagems that you know of. So the 3 chapters that have the best synergy with your Bladeguard veterans are Space Wolves are the first one, because they've got Hunters Unleashed, which is if they were charged, did charge or heroically intervene, then they're going to get a +1 to their hit roll, which is huge. They can also heroically intervene like a character would, and they've also got methods in their book to make that a 6-inch intervention as well. Their super doctrine is Savage Fury, so in the Assault doctrine, any 6s to hit will grant an additional hit. So as mentioned earlier, when you've got 25 hits, you're roughly getting 4 6s. Black Templars have Righteous Zeal, which will give them a reroll to charge and advance rolls, and also grants them a 5+ feel no pain roll against mortal wounds. Both very solid. Now Chaplains and Librarians can both do these buffs, but just by being Black Templars you get it automatically. Their super doctrine is Knights of Sigismund, which is while in the Assault doctrine, any 6s to hit will auto wound against non-vehicles. Pretty good. Blood Angels have Red Thirst, gives them a +1 to their advance and charge roll, and also a +1 to wound in melee, only on the turn they charged or were charged. It's very handy as you're likely wounded on 2s. Their super doctrine is Savage Echoes, which is if they charged or were charged, they'll get an extra attack. So those are the 3 more melee based chapters available. I'm sure other chapters have lots of cool combos, so as mentioned, put your combos down below for us all to see. We don't purposely miss out chapters here, it's just that some units are more built for some chapters over others. Of course, if you find some crazy combos with the chapter, for example, I bet White Scars have probably got a really crazy combo, so bring it to the table below and we can all see it. So it's time to conclude the unit. An extremely solid unit, very tanky with those shields, can withstand quite a punch. 3 wounds a pop is nice, and having 3 attacks is helpful too. They have an advantage over alternate units such as Terminators with the fact that you can take them in only units of 3 rather than Terminators having units of 5. However, Terminators of course have Deep Strike, which is pretty big for a melee based unit. Getting into combat is key here, and if you have to start buying HQs or transports just to aid them, then it's a bit of a tax, unless of course that's your plan all along, which then makes it a fantastic combo. The Bladeguard vets do tons of damage even to vehicles, and something else they have over the Assault Terminators is the 18-inch heavy bolt pistols. They will start to add up. Also with access to the Neo Volkite pistol for the Sergeant, that's worth it. But unfortunately there's no other upgrade options here for them, no Thunderhammers, no Lightning Claws. So you are stuck with how they come, but to be honest, I'm not unhappy with that. A lot of the game is infantry based, especially with objective secured troops. So if you really need the harder hitting melee units, then you can also go for those too. But the foundation of your army should have a solid anti-infantry base to it. Now we did review the Assault Terminators. I won't give their score away in this video, so check that one out after if you haven't already. As for rating, I'm going to be giving the Bladeguard Veterans a Planet 40k rating of 4 out of 5. Definitely better than average, very close to a 4.5 for me. Couldn't get there due to the methods of getting into combat not being so straightforward, and also you've got so many other options within the codex to select from in the elite options section. So not an auto include from me, but you will see a lot of these on the battlefield. That's my thoughts, let me know yours below. Question of the day, who are you taking, Terminators or Bladeguard Veterans? You get to pick one. And let me know why as well. Guys, if you've enjoyed the video, please remember to subscribe to help us on the road to 3,000 subs. Drop a like on your way out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.